You're going to have 2.5% of your population going to be dead unless you do something. And here's the magic vial, and we're not going to let you have it unless you agree to our terms and conditions. And if you don't take this elixir, your population is going to be decimated, and they're going to have you up on a pole. That's kind of the deal.
Is this the biggest risk we've ever taken with humanity?
These vaccines, these genetic vaccines that have been deployed globally, are neither safe nor effective by any objective standard. Pfizer delivered what the government bought. If you look at it through the eyes of Pfizer, it is the perfect product. You have recurrent dosing. You have a single purchaser who does all your marketing and distribution and absolves you of all liability. What's not to like?
You've become an expert in information warfare, really, because you've experienced it. You understand the medical side, but now you say it's Pfizer, Reuters.
These tools, they actively manipulate your knowledge. They actively modulate your emotions. Crowds can be directed to go here, there, or the other place. So if you want to add kinetic weaponry on top of that, it's child's play. You're already targeted. That's modern social media. You have to be aware that they are extremely skilled liars. They're trained to lie. They're trained to know how to manipulate your emotions and your beliefs. People have a choice as we're coming out of this. We've all been abused, really. We've all been damaged, but we don't have to be victims. We don't have to define ourselves as victims.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. You probably know that we've just recently been re-platformed on YouTube after 25 months completely in the dark. The truth is, I really need your help. What I really need you to do is click on that subscribe button right now, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment or share the link with friends. We're really fighting against an algorithm that's tried to keep us quiet for so long, and the more subscribers we have, the more people watch our content, the better guests we can bring you, the better content, and we can continue transforming lives. We've been doing this for 14 years now. I want to do this for another 14 years, but I really need your help. So click on that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, share this, and we're going to continue to bring you more and more great content. Thank you. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Robert Malone, the internationally recognized virologist, immunologist, physician, biochemist, and author. You are credited as the original inventor of mRNA delivery and vaccination as a technology, and have spent much of the last 40 years working on vaccine development with extensive experience in drug repurposing for infectious disease outbreaks. You have submitted almost 100 scientific peer-reviewed publications and have been invited as a speaker at over 100 conferences. However, for the past 3 years, you've been subject to censorship and defamation because you have criticized the U.S. government for their methods and standards of bringing vaccines to market in a safe and effective manner. You have said, if they can remove my voice, my experience, and my expertise, they win. Dr. Malone, welcome to London Real.
Well, thanks a lot for that intro. That's very well said and much appreciated.
Well, look, I want to jump into it here. You've got an incredible book and all sorts of really interesting IP. And, I'll just jump into it. You've called this, quote unquote, the largest human experiment ever. And according to the latest numbers I saw from you, and those are probably higher, more than 5.41 billion people worldwide have received a dose of some type of COVID-19 vaccine, equal to about 70% of the world population. I want to talk about what that means and the ramifications. I had a flashback today to November 11th, 2020, Robert, when I had Dr. Martin Kulldorff on this show. We streamed it live on our Digital Freedom platform because YouTube had been giving us strikes and banning us for months before that. He had just written the Great Barrington Declaration alongside a bunch of other scientists and was talking about how, statistically it didn't make sense because a lot of the deaths were coming from a very small percentage of the population, usually an older population, and they were just running the data and asking some questions. Three very top-level scientists, I think Stanford, Harvard, and Oxford, I think they were. And there was one point, Robert, where
all full professors of epidemiology, as about as qualified as you could possibly get.
Yeah, very much so. And one thing I said to him towards the end, and I just watched the clip back. I'm going to post it to my social and see how long it lasts. Is I said, Martin, we're about to vaccinate billions of people. I said, more so than any atomic weapon, any genocide, isn't this the biggest risk we've ever taken with the entire human population ever? I said, usually we take 10, 15, 20 years to come to vaccinations. This one's been developed in less than a year. And again, Martin wasn't necessarily, against the vaccination, but he kind of had to pause and say, this is a big chance that we're taking. And that always struck me as a guy who was quite objective. He just kind of had to pause and said, this really is a big unknown. And as a scientist, and I have an MIT degree in engineering, I'm not a doctor, but I just thought this is a big experiment to make.
MIT degree in engineering is pretty solid. I don't think you have to apologize.
So I remember asking him that, Robert, and I had a flashback when I was just preparing for this. Of course, fast forward, I guess about 2 years later. And by the way, at the time, there was nobody really having these conversations. We were one of the few that was fortunate enough to have a lot of different people on putting these ideas out there, just trying to get the information out. But it really struck me as this big question mark. And now fast forward to where we are today. Maybe just start off with some of your thoughts as far as that number of people, some type of vaccine, what we know, what we don't know. Is this the biggest risk we've ever taken with humanity?
Well, it's certainly the largest experiment I think we've ever conducted. And the vaccines, quote unquote, and there are many that will shoot at me for even using the term vaccine in this context, are only one of many of these massive public health experiments that we've performed globally. The others being the lockdowns in particular and social distancing, mask use, etc. Just a moment ago, my wife brought me the latest analysis on masking from the group in the UK that does a lot of the meta-analysis, and they've clearly concluded that the masking is not statistically significant in its impact, and most of these measures now have been shown to be at best ineffective and at worst massively damaging, particularly when you factor in the impacts on children. Martin, I agree with you. Martin is absolutely not a firebrand. He is a very cautious, balanced individual. He is, even compared to Harvard Reich, he is very cautious, as is Jay Bhattacharya, who's maintained his position at Stanford as a full professor. And was the one, by the way, that I'm talking about the other Great Barrington Declaration authors, just for the context for the audience. Jay Bhattacharya, full professor of epidemiology at Stanford, was the one that Elon Musk asked in to evaluate the information that we now call the Twitter files initially. And within a couple of days of Jay visiting headquarters for Twitter in Silicon Valley was when my account got turned back on, as well as Peter McCullough and a few others. So shout out to that. Another thing regarding Great Barrington, the real catalyst for that was actually Jeffrey Tucker, who runs the Brownstone Institute. You may or may not read the articles from Brownstone, but they have absolutely been at the forefront of citizen journalism all the way through this, and have done really the best work in tracking down the events involved in, let's call it, assimilation of the China model through the national security apparatus in the United States that then got propagated down through Homeland Security, DOD, and Health and Human Services. So just a shout out to Brownstone and Jeffrey Tucker for their leadership. Jeffrey told me the story of what happened with Brownstone. The actual with Great Barrington, the actual site that gives it its name, the Great Barrington Declaration, really regrets having hosted that meeting, apparently. And what I'm told is that to a significant extent, so did the three leading epidemiologists. They really had no idea that they had kicked the hornet's nest until suddenly all the blowback came back from all of the fact checkers and corporate media, et cetera, much as we've all encountered. I think they were really gobstruck by what they encountered. So it certainly has been a long, strange trip, to quote the Grateful Dead, over the last 3 years, and left is right and up is down. I was talking to a prominent New York journalist who was noodling for me for information over the last 2 days. And she asserted that the positions of Ron DeSantis, just unthinkingly, just came out of her mouth, the positions of Ron DeSantis in terms of medical freedom represented a position that's farther to the right than Donald Trump. I found that fascinating because it's grounded in the assertion that a belief that truth is true, in that we have the data that the vaccines actually do cause harm and they aren't particularly effective. And we have data on the impacts of masks, for instance, in children. We have data on the impacts of the lockdowns economically in terms of excess deaths, all kinds of secondary effects. And to be someone that is politically advocating for the rights of individuals in terms of these public health practices that have been so egregious results in you being labeled far right. I just find amazing in terms of political definitions of what is the political spectrum right now, that to take a position that's aligned with the Nuremberg Accords is considered far right now. It just, the whole arc of history over the last 3 years is amazing. And not to pump the book, the hope is that, as Steve Bannon notes, we're now in a time in which, as Orwell predicted, everything is getting memory hold really fast, even down to the level of the Wayback Machine. And we saw that with the responsive Pfizer to the Veritas videos that came out recently. And Bannon's point is that the only things that will survive, or may well survive, this memory holding process or internet wiping is going to be the printed material. And so that's part of what guides the book and its structure, is to serve as, really, it may sound pretentious, and maybe it is, a bit of a first draft of history, because it was written in real time using Substack as the vehicle for serializing it. And as some great British authors have done in the past, going back to the 1800s, serializing through various monographs, et cetera. So we decided, as we launched into this over a year ago, that we would use Substack essay format as a way to build the content chapter by chapter, serialize it, push it out. Then that allowed us to have feedback from the audience, the people that subscribe, et cetera, and allow us to kind of revise and fine tune. And then that became the backbone for the book as you see it right now.
You just mentioned the Wayback Machine. So for people that don't know, it's the thing that records the history of everything ever posted on the internet. And you're talking about this recent Veritas piece where they secretly recorded this Pfizer executive and
precisely.
And what did you say? Are they actually going back and altering?
So there is actually a documented accord now between the Wayback people that run the Wayback Machine and the U.S. intelligence community, And the for instance, one of the things that was fascinating, you may recall all of the controversy around the American issue of the Hunter Biden laptop that was purported to be a fake by the New York Times, among others, as opposed to, I think it was the New York Post that broke the story. And so you ended up with a little crosstown shooting match there. And the decision was made and it's now documented in Twitter and of course across all media that this Hunter Biden laptop story was fake news and it should be suppressed. And so initial articles that had been posted were literally wiped from the Wayback Machine as part of that agreement that exists now, that the U.S. government and the intelligence community and presumably Five Eyes can go in, like they edit Wikipedia very aggressively, by the way, and delete entries that are not in the national security interest.
Wow.
And in the case of the Hunter Biden laptop, what was fascinating about that is when it then became the approved narrative that in fact it was real, then Wayback Machine was caught repopulating those articles that they had previously taken down. So in the case of this recent dust up between Veritas, I'm trying to be neutral in my language here, between Veritas and Pfizer with that recorded kind of honey trap strategy that they do with this global director level person responsible for RNA vaccine strategies. Within hours, all records of that gentleman and his college career, et cetera, had been completely wiped off the internet, including off the Wayback Machine. And then, I talked about this in a recent essay, the cascade of events that occurred. It was fascinating to watch. It demonstrated the incredible power of Pfizer, or I should really say Pfizer Reuters, because they're closely tied to each other. And for instance, your own Daily Mail, one of the largest circulating publications in the world, put out an article about the Veritas drop within minutes, it seemed, and then within an hour that was deleted, and only people that had screenshot it still could show a record that in fact it had been on the Daily Mail. And then there was absolute press blackout globally on that story until really the alternative media and podcasters like you and I spoke about it. And then Tucker Carlson, I had pinged Tucker about the story before it ever broke. He's a buddy, and give him a heads up. And so the following day, after they had done their diligence, because there was one of the kind of dark arts that was circulated was that this gentleman was a fake. And this was all fraudulent. And
for people that haven't seen it, could you just describe what they recorded and what had happened in that? I think it might be good to have some context. So in this, and I do recommend, although apparently the YouTube video has been dropped from YouTube after a crazy number of views, 8 million or something, but you can still find it on Rumble and other platforms. Twitter, it's on there as well, right?
I don't know if it's primary on Twitter. A lot of those are links to the YouTube, and Twitter is now not playing nice with YouTube in a fascinating twist of events. So what it involves, Project Veritas here in the United States takes as a mission. It's a I guess it's a nonprofit funded by donations. And it seeks to uncover government corruption in particular. And it uses a particular strategy repeatedly in its modern embodiment. It got caught kind of with its fingers in the cookie jar a few years ago and got in trouble with some editing of videos. But in the modern embodiment with James O'Keefe, they're specialists in what I think is probably familiar to a British audience, these terms, honey traps. The use of attractive journalists of some type that are in some way sexually attractive to whoever the target is, and they often get the target for the investigation into a bar or some other environment where they're loosened up with alcohol or whatever the substance is, and then are caught with surreptitious taping that they were unaware of. And this is absolutely the strategy that was deployed here. O'Keefe, who's in charge of Veritas, acknowledges that this is a deceptive practice that he employs at Veritas, but his justification is he's trying to capture deceptive people. And so you have his justification is one has to resort to deception in order to capture and uncover deception. So bottom line is this young, fairly recent University of Texas medical graduate by way of undergraduate at Yale, who's African American and apparently gay, based on I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just describing the scene. Based on the fact that he appears he refers to this as a date with the journalist in a subsequent recording. The journalist is an ex-Pfizer employee who's male, so there's that. And this global worldwide director level person, 3 down from Boria, or some say 2 down in terms of the organizational chart, from the CEO of Pfizer, is very outspoken, very casual, cavalier, really, about describing things like regulatory capture, the revolving door, and most notably, what has a lot of people twisted up is his casual description of what is gain-of-function research by the U.S. federal definitions being performed at Pfizer in a program apparently designed to try to anticipate future viral evolution of escape mutants, so that they can prepare vaccines against those future potential escape mutants that they've generated through a number of methods that the gentleman refers to as directed evolution. But it's really just a euphemism. I dove into this because there had been a Stat News article published a number of months ago that actually described what was being done at Pearl River, New York, and in Texas at University of Texas Medical Branch by Pfizer. And it absolutely meets the criteria of gain-of-function research with the coronavirus. So this gentleman describing what is really, for most of us, ethical horrors, completely inappropriate behavior on the part of Pfizer, and so the initial pushback, as I mentioned, was basically a blackout of news about this, wiping the internet, memory holing, a stonewalling from Pfizer that then there was a subsequent drop and deployment, apparently, of a swarm of trolls, bots, and disruptors that pushed the narrative that this was fake, it was a deep fake, that the gentleman didn't even exist, that he wasn't an MD, he wasn't a Pfizer employee. Unfortunately, that all ran into the reality of another Pfizer employee, whistleblower, providing organizational charts from Pfizer that clearly demonstrated the gentleman was what he was. And a number of people had already done screen grabs of, they sent them to me. I could fully dox the gentleman. I have his email addresses, his phone numbers, his address, everything else. People sent to me. I just chose not to out of, a commitment to ethics and doxing. But the gentleman's absolutely real. And then O'Keefe ran a second video the following day in which he had personally, because at this point the gentleman doesn't necessarily know that he's been filmed, and O'Keefe confronts him with camera in public in a New York eatery of some kind, New York City, and unfortunately this gentleman who's like 4 years out of graduating medical school, I can't wrap my head around how you become a global director of RNA vaccines 4 years out of medical school with no formal training in science, but there it is. And O'Keefe confronts him, and the gentleman, unfortunately, just nobody ends up looking good. The gentleman becomes kind of violent, starts complaining that he's surrounded by white people, calls the police. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of stereotypic behavior comes out that's amazing to watch. And then the following day, Pfizer drops a press release. That's Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern U.S. So, I saw people chatting on the internet. Oh, they must have been working really hard all day long to put out that press release. I'm like, come on, guys. This is classic strategy if you want to avoid a hit on Wall Street and in the media. As you know, I think you used to work on Wall Street. You drop the bad news late Friday, and that gives the street a couple days to process that and kind of get over it. And it also kind of buries the news because you're avoiding the 5-day work week primetime broadcasts. So that's kind of the context. It was amazing to me as a demonstration of the power of Pfizer to control the narrative and completely control corporate media globally. As well as their ability to promptly wipe the web and to deploy what's really fifth-generation warfare tactics, including bots, trolls, disruptor agents, etc., on virtually all social media channels simultaneously. It was an amazing demonstration of modern spin control by clearly a sophisticated press office and operation within Pfizer. Unfortunately, I think that we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah,
in terms of whether they'll be held accountable for the actual actions that occurred.
Yeah, I clocked it on Twitter. I think it might have been a native video, and then I saw the reaction afterwards, which was pretty fascinating when they confronted this gentleman. But it was all pretty damning stuff, and I was kind of curious what they would do. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's been interesting to watch. You mentioned the Twitter files and how obviously I don't think a single mainstream news media publication has picked up any of that.
No. What they picked up is attacking Matt Taibbi.
Right. Calling him conservative.
They're attacking the journalists calling Matt Taibbi conservative requires intellectual backflips. I think 3 or 4 of them at least. Notoriously liberal writer for Rolling Stone for many years. But that's the new pejorative, right?
Yeah.
Is far right wing.
Well, it's interesting because I started off and mentioned the billions vaccinated, but you've become an expert in information warfare, really, because you've experienced it. You understand the medical side, but now you say it's Pfizer, Reuters. We had a little experience with big tech censorship in 2020 and afterwards. And when I read some of the information in your book and otherwise, when you're saying that through a Freedom of Information Act request, it shows that the CDC spent $1 billion tax dollars on propaganda to push the safety and effectiveness of vaccines and stop misinformation and putting money out to all these major publications. It seems that maybe this is a more pertinent conversation than even some of your medical expertise.
Thank you for saying that. My guiding light here, having experienced what I've experienced, has been to help, and this is really the purpose of the book, to help people to comprehend what they've experienced. And for better, for worse, I found myself at the tip of the spear as these various information management weapons have been deployed. My wife's book that she put out in the beginning of February 2020 on how to prepare and protect yourself from the novel coronavirus was deplatformed, delisted, burned, whatever metaphor you want to use, by Amazon in March of 2020. and it was really quite benign. It was written to academic standards by a PhD in public policy and biotech, that being my wife, and myself, and highly referenced, academically cited, and deplatformed. By the way, we were also, I think, many people credit us with the first to break the story about not only the involvement of James Smith from Reuters with Pfizer, but also the Trusted News Initiative and what it really meant. And there's now a lawsuit going against them by Children's Health Defense, among others, for basically monopolistic practices. But I thank you for acknowledging that. My intention has been to help heal and to help people, and help people comprehend what we've all experienced, because it's overwhelming. I had the benefit, in part because I decided to accept the jab and had the consequences, but I was able to travel internationally, and I booked over 400,000 miles last year on commercial air, not to mention the privates. And I've been, I haven't spent any time in Asia, but a fair amount of time in North America and Europe. And what has stunned me is that all of this, really what we now know as fifth generation warfare, often deployed by the militaries of the Five Eyes Alliance on their citizens, was amazingly coordinated, down to the level of specific messaging, like the Dirty Dozen, anti-vaxxers, all of the language modification that is, so deeply Orwellian. I think if those of us that weren't already amazed at George Orwell and his prophetic capabilities, after the last 3 years, Huxley and Orwell need to be elevated to the level of Nostradamus, I think. It's just been amazing to watch. And one of the things that hit me hard recently was I was in Vienna, Austria, for another one of our events. And I was speaking to some people within the arts community there that ran coffee shops and such, it's Vienna. And what they told me was that just like in the United States, there had been a harmonized massive purchase of endorsement by artists of every walk in Austria. And as you know, Vienna, it's all about the arts. And so you had musicians, writers, graphic artists, all these people all received capital, all received cash in order to buy their endorsement and support of the vaccine products. It all happened in a harmonized fashion globally. We've never seen anything like this. And I can tell you, as a veteran of multiple outbreaks, I've never seen anything like this. It was amazing what we've all experienced. And now the press releases are coming, the FOIA documents are coming out in the lay press, in the UK, in Australia, and in Canada in particular, not quite so much in the United States, that are documenting that, in fact, the militaries of the military PSYOP operations within all of these nation states were intimately involved in all of this coordinated messaging, enticement, coercion, and then, of course, in many cases throughout Europe and North America, mandates for a experimental medical product. We've never seen anything like this in our lives. I haven't. I don't think you have. I'm just writing my essay right now for today's Substack and comparing the 1918 outbreak to the current one. And in the 1918 H1N1, we call it Spanish flu here in America because we want to blame the Spaniards when in fact it probably originated in the Midwest in the U.S. and Midwestern pig farmers, but that's another story. That had 50 million deaths globally. We're at about 6 million currently with COVID, and that's probably an overcount because of the financial incentives to overcounting in the United States, certainly. And if you just the raw numbers, that's a massive difference. And about 2.5% of the world's population was lost during the quote Spanish flu or H1N1 1918 outbreak, which is kind of the gold standard for big kahuna global outbreaks. And here, when you run the numbers, it's something like 0.002% of the global population. I mean, this was all of this jabber about what a huge public health tragedy and any loss of life to infectious disease. I'm not in any way belittling the damage that was caused, but a lot of that damage was iatrogenic. A lot of it was avoidable. A lot of it was caused by medical mismanagement. As we mentioned earlier, it was caused by the lockdowns. What has happened here is a stunning example of the problems of a centralized management and decision-making tree. And we can nitpick at who was the puppet master, and you're a guy that has a background in finance, and you probably even, I imagine you might even personally know Ernst Wolf, but in Germany, who's been a major voice in advancing the theory that this, either through pre-planned or reactionary, was exploited for a variety of economic and political advantage globally. And we see the consequences of that in the massive financial shift, that occurred during these 3 years. But, I think we're all still having, even me, who's, as black-pilled as you can get at this point, just about, I'm not busy saying that Bill Gates is trying to depopulate the earth or Tedros, that's I won't go there. Many people do, but in terms of data-based blackpilling, conspiracy theory, I'm about as far out. I'm still amazed when I saw that video from Veritas, and I was given the embargoed video to react to, and then they captured my reaction almost in real time immediately after I had viewed it. I was stunned. I mean, I still think that I'm, I tell myself I'm not naive, as naive as I used to be, and I am still stunned by what I encounter and learn on almost a daily basis about what's transpired here.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I might have actually seen your reaction video, and the fact that you're stunned, I think, means that you're still able to be objective, and so that's a good thing. We had a bit of an experience, and I might as well just break it down because I think it might be relevant here, and then I'd like to just dive a little bit deeper into some of the points you're making in the book and some of the realizations. But just to give you a background, I started broadcasting kind of Joe Rogan style back in 2011. I was actually inspired by Joe to basically quit my job in finance and start podcasting when no one seemed to care. That was bold. Yeah. And so, I went and did that for 9 years, where I had about 1,000 people on my show, and I uploaded these videos to YouTube. And by the time we got to March 18th, 2020, I had almost 2 million subscribers and probably 500 million views on the platform. And it broadcasts, all sorts of different episodes. I'd actually been on Rogan's show back in 2012, and I'd had, you name it, on my show: activists, politicians, heavyweight boxers, all that stuff. And then on April 6th, 2020, we conducted the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day. We had 65,000 concurrent people watching me here in this studio with another gentleman who was 70 years old have a conversation in this tone of voice, where he asked questions or made assertions that maybe the PCR test wasn't the best thing, asked questions about masks, talked about vaccinations. And it was so much in demand that if we extrapolated the numbers, the episode would have gone on to been watched 30 or 40 million times, and would have been watched more than probably the most watched podcast at the time, which was Elon Musk smoking weed on Rogan's show, which was about 20 million. And
supposed rumor has
yeah,
it that I think it was 1757 the one I hit hit 100 million.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's possible. Yeah, you came later, obviously. And so, so we were. It was quite a broadcast, and it was a time of real uncertainty. And we walked out of the studio, and then somebody came up to me in my office and said, "The video's been deleted." And I was like, "What are you talking about? This must be a mistake. Re-upload it." And then that was deleted, and we re-uploaded it again. It was deleted, and I thought, "Wow, this has never happened to me." I thought it was the weirdos that got censored, and I got a real dose.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. And so we started a head-to-head fight. The BBC came out with an article the next day saying that that basically they had pressured YouTube to take it down.
Really?
Yeah. I had been
to
yeah.
So that was a TNI hit. You might have common cause. You might want to ring up Bobby Kennedy at CHD and have a chat about that lawsuit.
Yeah, maybe I will. Yeah, he was on the show a couple months later. Yeah, it was so again, I had been down to YouTube headquarters. I had a partner manager, and actually I had to hear about that through an article on the BBC the next day where YouTube commented that they took it down because they didn't like what we were doing. And I called my YouTube person. I was like, I thought you would have maybe spoke to me before you spoke to the BBC about this. And apparently the same guest had been on my show about 3 weeks earlier asking questions, and they were poised and ready. And when we went live, they were watching, and then they just used us apparently as a reason to get us down. So we started going up against content strikes, and then YouTube threatened to delete basically 9 years of my life, 10,000 videos. And so I got a real dose of this. And so we ended up creating our own platform and streaming on something called the Digital Freedom Platform, and started having conversations with all the people that were talking about it, including Great Declaration people, everybody, and doing it all. I
think when I was in the Bath conference last, somebody from the Digital Freedom Group in London gave me a business card.
Oh, I don't know if that was us or not. It might have been someone else. And we're called the Digital Freedom Platform. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's associated with us. So I got a real dose of this, and I've always been trying to make sense of what was going on. And again, I think the point I was going to make is when I started seeing, by the way, at the same time, we were simultaneously dropped by Dropbox, which we use to store all of our content. I didn't realize they were watching our content. PayPal suspended like $100,000 of our money. Not to mention, of course, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. The list went on. And so when I watched the Twitter files recently, I thought, back then, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I leave that to the guests on my show. But then reading the Twitter files, I had a similar reaction that maybe you do these days, where I'm thinking, wow, well, I guess all that could have happened if it was coordinated by maybe certain agencies that we could see evidence of the Twitter files.
Well, that's now you're mashing your finger right on the red hot button. That's you and I have to be careful because we're speculating now, in a very torturous environment. But that's one of my current missions, is pulling any documentation I can get about the involvement of the intelligence community, the national security state, and particularly the military, because the articles that I'm finding in British press, as I mentioned, Canadian press has been quite a few, and Australian press now, some Aussies that follow me have been sending stuff. I don't have anything from New Zealand. All indicate that there was a major involvement by military psyops divisions in each of those nation states against their own civilians.
Yeah. And
then we have the fascinating example of the Wikipedia editing, and there's a wiki for the intelligence community that has tracked down some of that, and it appears that it's the assertion is made that MI5 has a sock puppet who literally has an image of a sock puppet for their ID, that whatever it is, the same name is attributed with the editing, not just on my Wikipedia page, this aggressive editing, but also on many of the physicians that have been outspoken and anybody that said anything about these key topics of ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or other early treatments. All seems to be the same individual who apparently...
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Most people will never see this opportunity. Dubai luxury transformation projects have historically delivered 40 to 90% annual returns. That is incredible. These were once reserved only for insiders with access. I spent 15 years on Wall Street and I learned this: the biggest returns always go to the people who get the call first. Now, you finally can. We've just received a brand new project with major upside potential. Allocations move fast. Click the link, apply now, and speak to my team. This is your chance to see what others never will.